welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can stretch your stamps, featuring some kitchen sink stamps. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so what I have here is I have this set of kitchen sink stamps. This is the multi-step iris, and I'll of course link it down below. It's a super easy stamp, and I'm going to show you 3 different looks that you can get from the same stamp. Because we want to stretch our supplies, and I've had this stamp for some time, so this isn't anything brand new. I'll go ahead and place my paper down in my MISTI here, and so that it's in camera for you. And there are 4 steps to the flower, and 2 or 3, I'm just going to be using 2 for the stem and then 3 for the leaf. And I'm only going to do 1 flower because I want this to be, I don't know, just kind of the focal point. So I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to just stamp the normal way. And I'll be using Distress Oxides today. So stamping the normal way, you're going to get the most depth and realism from your stamp. So this is shaded lilac. And sometimes I'll stamp 1 or 2 times. It just depends on how the ink goes down. I do like using the oxides, and one of the reasons I'm using the oxides is because with one of the effects that I'm doing, it changes the color a bit. So I've got layer 1 down with the shaded lilac, and then I have this sped up a bit, but this is a super easy stamp to do. You may see my head get in the way a time or two. Okay, we're going down with layer 2 and Dusty Concord, and I'm liking the way that looks. So I'm going to go down with layer 3 and just want to line them up. Such a gorgeous stamp set. Maria has a ton of beautiful, beautiful stamps over at Kitchen Sink Stamps. Okay, there's layer 3, which was the, I forgot. I showed you though, I'm sure I did. And now we're going down with layer 4, and we're using the Villainous Potion. So I've used the whole set of purples here. Let me zoom in close for you so you can see the detail of that stamp with the 4 colors. And here I've got the stems. Let me zoom back out so I've got myself mostly in camera here. And I'm going to use a light green because that's where my stamp's going to go. So I'm using Shabby shutters here. And then I'm going to use peeled paint on layer number 2. And just match them up, and guess what? They don't have to be perfect because you can take a little makeup brush and move that ink over a little, which is what's the cool thing about oxides as well. And then we'll go ahead and get the leaf down. And it's just beautiful on its own. You don't have to do any kind of special effects to it. We're going to do layer 2, and then I'll go on to layer 3, and that kind of gives that a cupped look. And then I'm going to use Forest Moss for layer 3. So it gives that leaf some depth. Now I've got my little makeup brushes that I get on Amazon, and I'll link those down below too. And I'm going to start out with some squeezed lemonade, and I slowed this back down to normal for you so you could kind of see how I do this. So I just tap the ink in. And it's okay if it goes over that shaded lilac a little. It kind of pulls a sort of a green color, which is fine. Now you could do these in any colors you wanted. I happen to like the traditional, this type of iris, but there are tons of colors of iris that you could choose from. So after I do the squeezed lemonade, I'm going to go in with the Fossilized amber. Same little brush. And I'm just going to tap some shading in here so that it's got, you know, some depth of color to match the stamping. Okay, and then lastly, I'll go in with Wild Honey, which is kind of an orange, yellow-orange color. And I'll tap that Wild Honey in just along that edge there. Then that one is done. Okay, so there's our traditional multi-layer stamping. And it looks like a real iris, like you can reach out and pick it, especially if you added shadows and stuff, which I'm not doing today. Okay, so here comes the experiment that I tried that I really liked how it worked. I could tell you that I failed at it multiple times before I got it right, so there's that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first layer, and I'm using the same colors. So I'm going to use the shaded lilac. I'm going to stamp it down really well. But then I'm going to take it out, and I'm working on watercolor paper, by the way, and I'm going to get it wet. And I'm going to grab a paper towel and start to dab. I want to move that water around. I'm trying to get that color to kind of bleed and spread out. And then I'll start tapping off because I don't want it super, super heavy. I do want to move around a little bit more, and then I'll take my drying tool and just dry that layer. And tap as well. You know, if the water starts to get too dark, like towards the edge, I'll tap the edges. There we go. And this is what gives it that sort of faded, dreamy look. Now, sometimes after you've gotten it wet and dried it, it warps a bit, and it's hard to stick to your thing because it's warped, so I will use a magnet. So I'm going to let me grab the right one. I'm going to take layer 2, and there's my head in the way again. Has to be, because, yeah, I have to be able to see what I'm doing. And I'm going to stamp down layer 2. And that is going to be with the Dusty Concord. Okay, now on my first one, I didn't do this step. I just left the first step. This one, I'm adding a little extra color to my kind of outline. And I end up pretty much wiping up most of that color. It still comes out pretty, but I think that just doing the first layer is fine. And I'm going to go ahead and dry that. But this is kind of what gives it that ethereal look. I'm just kind of drying it towards the back too, so that it's hopefully kind of straightens out so I can hold it in there. Now I'm going to use the same stamp and stamp over that one more time. I'm going to use another magnet. Clean off the stamp. And then I'm going to lay the stamp down in its spot again. Make sure it's in the right spot. And I'll stamp it again with the Dusty Concord. So that I have that fine detail as well. And then I'll go in with the Wilted Violet for layer 3. I'm not going to wet anything more. Just make sure it's lined up here. It's very handy to have a MISTI tool. I am not a seat-of-the-pants stamper. I really have to I have to have help. So any kind of stamp positioner is really helpful. It doesn't have to be a MISTI. It can be whatever you have. So there's layer 3, and then I'll go back in with layer 4 with the Villainous Potion. So again, same color used on all of these, or same color combination, I should say. And so there we've got that detail, but we've also got that kind of creamy, dreamy look. So I'm going to go ahead and do the stem and the leaf. I'm not going to use water on the leaf and stem at this point, and the reason for that is because I don't want that green bleeding into my purple. I have a solution for that. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple layers here of this Shabby Shutters, and then I'll do a layer of the come on, brain, I know you're there. Peel paint. Yeah, I might have to move my magnet here so I don't have the bottom popping up on me. There we go. And we'll grab our peeled paint. So you can use any kind of water reactive ink with this technique, any kind. Doesn't have to be Distress Oxides. Now with the third technique, if you use just regular water reactive ink that isn't an oxide, then you're not going to get that sort of color shift. Okay, we'll get our second and third layers in. And then we're going to pull it and we're going to do something more to it, so that I can spread that color out and have, you know, basically a ready-made background after the fact. So we'll do our forest moss here. And I won't make you watch a third time of me stamping all of this for the third technique. I'll just show you what I do. Okay, so I've got my little mushy brushes again. They're just cheap makeup brushes. Now I'm going to squirt a little water on my mat here, tap it off, and I'm just going to tap around the edges here, moving some of that ink to the outside of the flower and out into my surface, and then dab as I go. So that's pretty much what I'm doing for the rest of this part. And you can go out as far or as little as you want. You can go as heavy or light as you want. But we are grabbing that color and moving it out. So you've got that sort of impressionistic look. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe the look. It's just a look. Something different. See, in this one, I've lost a bit of the detail compared to the first one I did. So I'm going to recommend, although this looks really pretty, I'm going to recommend just doing the first layer with the water, you know, the stamping part. This part is fine. See, if it's too heavy, I'll just add a little extra water. Let that water sit for a second and then tap it off. And we're not looking for perfection here anyway. That's not the point of this, right? This is stretching your stamps. So I'm just moving that water out. And then dabbing off. Then I'm going to get the other end of the brush, get a clean spot, and I'm going to do the same with the edges of the greenery, so that it pulls a little bit of that sort of yellowy green out. And just dab your brush off time to time. Dab off the edges if they get too weird. Weird is my best description. Okay. And then I can go ahead and I'm just going to try and pull some of that from there. I don't want it so dark. I'm going to go ahead and get my yellow and do my little yellow thing that I did earlier. It works out just slightly differently when your paper's a little bit damp. And this is of course watercolor paper. The first paper I used was some Hammermill 100 pound. And that's the same paper I'm going to be using to do the third technique. So again with Fossilized amber. And then the wild honey. Okay, there's that one done. Let's do the third technique here. So I am going to grab the one that I did earlier on the Hammermill, and I'm going to show you what you can do to make this slightly change the color, make it look more in the background and more of a watercolor type effect. So I'm just going to take a watercolor brush and some plain water, and I'm just going to dab off my brush a little and I'm making sure my brush is clean here because sometimes I forget and I put them away dirty. My bad. Because they're black, you can't tell. And I'm just moving the color around, and I'm starting with the purple so that it's wet, but it's also blended differently, like you would see maybe in impressionistic watercolor. So I don't have the crisp fine lines. It's more muted. And the water, of course, will change the appearance of the color of the Distress Oxides because we're not going to be dabbing this. So this is super easy. And just another way to stretch your stamp set. Or stencil. This will work with stencils too. Just moving that around. Trying not to move it around too much. Trying to keep, the dark areas where it's dark. The stamp itself will lead you where to put the water. Okay, and then I'll clean my brush off, and I'll do the green. Or the yellow. I think I'll do the yellow first. So I'm basically just blending that all together. And then I'm not even going to change or clean my brush when I go down to the green. I do not know what that little piece of whatever is. But it keeps coming back. And there this is also where if you've gotten the stamp off a little bit crooked, you can correct it. Nobody will ever know. And I'm just going to kind of go around the edge here with some water and just kind of pull out the color a little bit. In hindsight, I don't know that I would do this on the Hammermill. It's not the best at taking water and letting it, you see how it kind of leaves a halo there, but I'm okay with that. And you'll see as it dries, the colors, it's much more muted in comparison. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to trim these down, and I like to trim them down to 3 3/4 by 5 and either mat them or have a large border around them. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to trim it down. And then what I do is once I've got them trimmed down and I'm happy with them, if they're really warpy, I'll send them through my Mink. And always when you're measuring, don't count on the bottom, count on the sidelines there. So I'm going to cut most of the top. Because I use watercolor paper, my watercolor paper is a little bit larger than my standard paper that I usually trim down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So here's me just sending it through my mini Mink so that it's dried flat. And I don't worry about ink unless it's like a mica type ink. I don't worry about it getting on my rollers. If you are, don't do this step. Okay, and we'll trim this one down. Same trimming. So I'm going to trim it to 3 3/4 by 5. And then I'll do another one off camera so it's the crisp one again. And I'll do 3 different card styles. Okay, so we've got that one. And then I'll tell you what I did with them. We've got that one. All right, so here's the crisp one. Okay, really nice detail in that. Here's the watercolor one. And then here's the sort of halo technique one, I guess they call it. And let me go do 3 different things with these and come right back to you. All right, so here's what I've done. For the crisp one, I've taken another kitchen sink stamp, the stamp Love, and just simply stamped it on there. And the stamps are Make a Big Statement. Just simply stamped it on there and added some sequins. And for the watercolor one, I made a border for it, and then put some mica stain, and then this is a foiled sentiment on vellum. And then lastly, this is the haloed one, where I also made a very thin matte layer and stamped this stamp from scrapbook.com called Gratitude. I think that's my favorite one. Love, love, love this stamp. So that's it, guys. I hope you like this video, and I hope you play around. Don't be afraid. Give me a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and consider subscribing. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.